You're listening the Virtual CISO podcast, providing the best insight on information security and security IT advice to business leaders everywhere.
So today, what I wanted to chat with you about is using AI in a provably secure and compliant manner, because that's suddenly become a contractual and or regulatory obligation for many of the organizations that we work with. So let's start simple. From your perspective, what are some of the risks that AI introduces to most organizations?
Absolutely. So some of the ones right off the bat, and this has a lot to do with the large language models that we've seen come out and become popular over the last couple of years, but misinformation caused by the models hallucinating. And for those who don't know what that is, the model can just output information. It doesn't mean it's correct. And so when organizations either formally implement a tool that leverages AI, or employees or people use a tool informally, sometimes they can rely on that information as if it's ground truth, and that's not always the case. And so depending on the processes that the AI tool is supporting, you can have risky outcomes, you can have unnecessary bias, or even potentially discrimination. So hallucinations and misinformation is a huge problem if there's not verification done on the output of these models. And then also, there's, depending on how models are trained, it's possible if you haven't vetted and tested the model appropriately, that you can sometimes extract some of the information that was used to train the model. And that's not always a good idea, because it could be proprietary information, intellectual property, things of that nature. So those are really the two big ones. And then another one, which has been around for a while, but is just even more prevalent with the popularity of artificial intelligence recently, is automated decision-making risk. So this has been something that's been out for a while. So for example, when you go to apply for a loan, in many cases, there's an artificial intelligence that uses the variables from your application to determine the amount of risk to the bank of you defaulting on that loan, and it applies a specific interest rate. Now, if the model is faulty or trained on data that is biased, sometimes that can cause discriminatory outcomes for certain groups of individuals. So some people may get a different interest rate based on faulty training data, when really they should be getting a more fair, or perhaps a much higher interest rate than the model predicts. And this can apply across many different areas. Things like insurance and finance and loans is a really good example of this, that's been implemented long before these large language models. But anytime an organization is trusting a model to make some sort of decision, or even a recommendation that the organization is going to take into account, they have to make sure that they are not introducing bias, because they're going to be accountable for the discriminatory outcomes.